foreclosure defense, bankruptcy, student loan debt, and more. Put the power back in your hands. This is Behind the Law with attorney Justin Clark on TV 27.
Hey, welcome to Behind the Law. I am Justin Clark. Today, two major issues we're going to focus on. Number one, getting out from under your debt, moving on with life without all of this stress that you've been feeling for the last couple of years. It's a lot easier than you think, but you need to have someone to talk to help figure out what the best move is to help you and your family get debt-free. Also, Carlos Leach is going to join us. He's a lawyer handling employment law, and what a better time to talk to an employment lawyer than now. We've had people that are getting fired. What can your boss do right now due to the pandemic? Are you allowed to take time off if you get sick? He's going to answer all of those questions and more. It's a great show. Thank you for spending your Sunday mornings with me, as always, and let's get started. Okay, so debt. Debt makes you feel horrible. It keeps you up at night. It can create health concerns for you. It separates you from your spouse, your kids. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And it's frustrating to me at times because bankruptcy has such a bad name to it, such a bad ring. Oh, we would never want to file bankruptcy. Bankruptcy, to me, I think we've filed, 20,000 of them or whatever. Bankruptcy is sometimes the absolute best thing for you. Sometimes it's the best thing for your family. And it's super simple and cheap, by the way. A bankruptcy costs like $2,000, maybe $2,500 max to actually file bankruptcy. And what can you do? There are two real types of bankruptcies that you would really use, a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13. Chapter 7 is the quick, easy bankruptcy. Takes 3 or 4 months. You're in and out. You're done. You don't even have to go to court right now. The only thing that you have to do with bankruptcy is you have this little Zoom meeting with the trustee, and the trustee basically says, okay, is all this paperwork accurate? And that's it. You literally don't go to court to file bankruptcy. Chapter 13 is a little bit more complex, and generally you do a 13 if you make too much money or you have too much in assets, you would do a 13. A 13 is a repayment plan over the next 3 to 5 years with the trustee, but a 13 can be a miraculous tool to help you with all of your debt. And let's start with the 13. So a 13 generally we would do if you're trying to save your house and do a modification on your house and you're in foreclosure or you're behind on the mortgage, because we have the ability, as soon as we file a 13, we have the right, really, to go to a mediation with your bank, whether it's Bank of America, Wells Fargo, whoever your mortgage company is, go to a mediation and try to say, look, our interest rate is too high. We want to lower our interest rate. They can go down to a 2% interest rate and do a modification on the loan. I mean, right now you're behind $20,000, $30,000. You can't just write a check for $30,000 to bring the mortgage current. You can't do that. But if we go to a modification and do the mediation program, you just have to start making your new monthly payment. In fact, what we really do is we propose a payment to the trustee and to the bank based on 31% of your gross monthly income. So if your gross monthly income is $10,000, your payment would be $3,100 basically. It really comes down to a percentage of your gross monthly income and a payment that is affordable for you. So while we do this, while we're saving the house, though, all that credit card debt that you have, older IRS debt, we can sometimes deal with the student loans, all of that other stuff is wiped out as well. And let's be clear, we don't really want to look at our credit right now because of the issues that we have. But when I look at your credit, I'm going to see what your score is today, and then it's going to show me what your score is in 12 months, and you're going to very likely be over 700. You're going to feel normal again financially. You're going to feel free financially, and I assure you that is a life-changing moment when that happens for you. And then you get to the student loans as well, and we talked about the student loans last week. The student loan companies, the Department of Education, is about to come full force against you. And they don't have to sue you. As we discussed, they do not have to sue you. All they have to do is send you a letter, and they start garnishing your wages. It is so easy for them to garnish your wages, but it is not easy to get that stopped. With this Chapter 13, we have the right to, just like a mortgage, have a mediation with the servicer of the student loans and try to come up with a solution that makes sense for you financially. And sometimes the solutions, we get on a payment plan of $0 a month. Sometimes the solution is the school did something wrong and we get the loans fully wiped out. And right now there are so many changes in the student loan world where for years you've heard there's nothing you can do. I disagree. I think there are plenty of things that you can do. IRS, another a very aggressive debt collector. I mean, they're the world's largest debt collector. But what people don't understand is the IRS debt that's more than 3 years old can be wiped out by filing bankruptcy. Or even if you don't want to file bankruptcy, there are ways to deal with your IRS debt as well. An offer in compromise is a fancy term for settlement of your IRS debt. An installment agreement is a fancy word for pay them off over time. Or maybe we go in and see that the debt is so old that they can't even pursue you for it. Or sometimes we'll put you on a non-collectible status, meaning they're not going to come after you. Like student loans, the IRS does not have to sue you to come take your money. In fact, just one quick letter and they can garnish your wages, but they can even get into your bank account and take money directly out of your bank account. Now, that's not a good day. Imagine walking into Publix to buy groceries for the family and you swipe the debit card and it's declined and you say, well, how is it declined? I had 20 grand in there. There's no way it got declined. Turns out the IRS has come in and taken the money out of your account. And that's what happens. And it happens often. The good thing is, once we get involved, we send a power of attorney to the IRS. We normally do what we call a stop and stay, a timeout. Leave my client alone. We're going to try to work this out with you, IRS. And the vast majority of times they will give us time. And I mean several months worth of time to come up with a solution to solve our IRS problems. From a personal level, I think what I want you to know, I need you to know that I know what it's like to roll around in bed at night worried about money. I grew up doing it. My whole life I grew up doing it. And I know how bad it feels. It's not a great feeling. And I would much rather you and I file some sort of bankruptcy to solve all of your financial problems at once than you stay up at night stressed, than you worry about paying Amex back $500 a month, but not being able to put food and groceries on the table. There is no reason right now with 9 million jobs available. There is no reason why we can't get back to work, why we can't get rid of all of this past debt. And a lot of us have really added a lot of debt over this last 15 months due to the pandemic, due to the fact that there weren't always these jobs available. But I see no reason why any of us right now cannot get back to work. And I don't need you working, though, to pay for all the debt that got you through this pandemic if it's going to prevent you from putting food on the table. We have options to deal with this past debt. Thankfully, there are jobs available. And I know you can go find a job right now. And I would say do not wait until this unemployment kicker is fully gone. I know in Florida it's kind of gone now or whatever, but don't wait, because when that happens, everyone is going to be out looking for a job, and jobs are going to be harder to come by. Right now, we're in a great spot with 9 million jobs available. But don't you think as everyone else gets back to work, it's going to be more difficult to find a job? Of course it is. Now is the time. Go find that job now and make yourself indispensable to this employer of yours. And now, look, we're going to have no debt, a great job, and really a new life moving forward. It's a no-brainer. Here's what you should do, because I would never charge you to come into my office and sit down and go through all of these financial issues that you have. Costs $0. If we end up doing something together, it's a very low flat fee. You can even pay it over time if you need to, and it's a life-changing day for you, a life-changing day for your family. 321-282-1055. When we get back, employment law. What is that? What is employment law? We're going to find out with Carlos Leach. Quick break. We'll be right back with more Behind the Law.
My law firm has helped thousands of people in financial stress get out of debt and back on their feet.
Filing for bankruptcy may wipe away credit card debt, HOA debt, and even IRS debt. It may also lower your car and mortgage payment. Visit youhavepower.com to learn how. Welcome back to Behind the Law. As promised, my good buddy Carlos Leach is here, theleachfirm.com. Carlos, how are you, man?
I am doing great.
So you probably have the most well-known employment law firm in town. What is employment law exactly? What do you guys do?
Well, remember, we only represent individuals, so we don't represent companies. But in that regard, we represent people for things like terminations, discrimination, It could be pregnancy, age, disability, any of that stuff. We do medical leave cases where, you might have to have some serious surgery where you're out 2 to 3 months and the company doesn't want to bring you back, or they retaliate against you for taking that time off. We do those cases. We do wage-related cases, whether it's overtime, minimum wage, or your basic unpaid wage case. So it just depends.
How has the pandemic, if at all, affected what's going on in the employment law world?
So, obviously, we saw record numbers of layoffs, furloughs, and things like that. So let's just say the phone was ringing. There were a lot of people who had employment issues. A lot of it were related to COVID issues. If you, contracted COVID, you might have needed time off. Most employers were understandable.
Yeah.
Many were not. And those led to some litigation cases.
Right.
But now, people are getting back to work, so we see a little bit less of that.
I always hear people say Florida's a right-to-work state. You can never sue your boss or whatever. What does that mean, and is it true?
You know what that means?
What?
It means you have no right to work whatsoever.
Oh, is that right? That's just the opposite of what you would think.
That's as blunt as I can tell you. You have no right to work whatsoever. It's a misnomer, and I wish they would stop using it. Mm-hmm. But it basically means the default means there is no understanding that you're going to work for a company for a specific period of time unless you have a contract that says otherwise.
Do employers ever have insurance for employment claims against them?
Yes.
Okay.
Many do, and they come in a wide variety of contracts. Most of them will have insurance, but they might be a very large deductible. Mm-hmm. But there are insurance policies out there that will cover certain claims like discrimination and things like that. It's rare, though. I think I probably see it 1 out of every 50 cases.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very rare.
Do you think employers, and I know you only represent individuals, but should employers look at that when they're looking at their policy? Because, there are a lot of lawsuits with discrimination and all sorts of things these days.
Well, I can tell you I have.
Yeah.
And you should, too.
I think I do. I'll have you review my policy a little bit later after the show.
No, you should. I think so. Why wouldn't you get it? You get car insurance, you get homeowners insurance. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It just provides you that extra layer of protection.
I consider it a little bit different than employment law, but really in the same spectrum is workers' compensation. Your firm does workers' comp
we do.
For injured workers. What is workers' comp exactly?
Well, workers' compensation in the state of Florida basically provides the employee 2 different types of benefits. We call it indemnity or lost wages. So if you can't work or you have work restrictions that say you can't go back to doing your job, then the insurance company will pay you until you've gotten as good as you're going to get. Number 2, you'll be provided medical benefits. So long as the doctors say that the treatment they're recommending is related to the accident, then you'll get those 2 benefits. But whenever we consult with a client for workers' compensation, we have a speech that we give them, and it goes something like this. We say, you've been injured in the state of Florida. We got good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hit first? And they almost always say, well, give me the good news.
Yeah.
And I say, well, there ain't no good news.
Oh,
You've been injured in the state of Florida.
Right.
So we explain to them you get 2 different types of benefits. There's nothing else that you can get out of this case. There's no pain and suffering. There's no emotional distress. None of those types of remedies or damages you can get in a personal injury case, they simply don't apply. And once you give it to them as blunt as you can, now they start to understand that this is a no frills type of law, and I get 2 things.
Can I sue my employer separately, or is it I can only get workers' comp?
98% of the time you cannot. These companies have something called immunity. So as long as they provide workers' compensation insurance, then they cannot be sued because they may have been negligent when they injured you on the job. Now, in exchange, there is not a fault requirement at all for the worker. So nobody will question, whether the worker was clumsy or not. As long as you were in the course and scope of your job and you got hurt, coverage should be provided. So those are the 2 things that are given in exchange.
So I got hurt on the job yesterday,
Yep.
but my boss has been paying me under the table cash since I've been working there the last year. What does workers' comp have to do with that?
We see that a lot in cases like construction. That comes to mind, number one. We see that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
It depends. So most of the policies these insurance companies write, they'll probably have an exclusion for that. So if you don't have somebody on the books, then my guess is this policy is going to say then you aren't a real, true, quote unquote employee. So some people like the benefits of being paid under the table, but there's consequences if something happens.
Right. How do we treat our employees in Florida in relation to other states in America?
So we have, it's a good question. We have an office in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Most of what we've seen is that workers' compensation laws, for the most part, are pretty uniform across the country, especially in the South. When you start to go up north to states like New York and Pennsylvania and those states where they have a big union presence, then they get significantly more benefits than they would in Florida, Texas, Alabama. So if you're in the South, workers' compensation is not going to work out too great for you. If you're in the North, it's going to work out a little bit better.
Got it. So I get hurt on the job. How do I know how much they're going to pay me every week for my workers' compensation benefits?
So in Florida, they use something called average weekly wage. So basically what they do is they take your earnings for the 13 weeks prior to the accident, add it up, and get the average. And that's what your rate will be for the remainder of your case.
Gotcha. Am I getting paid 100% or a lesser percentage?
No, you're getting, if you can't work at all, it's 2/3. If you can work, but if you are able to work, but you have restrictions and you can't go to your prior job, then it's around 64%. But, the good thing is this money is not taxed.
Right.
So it's almost as much as you would make post-tax if you were still working.
So I get hurt on the job. They're going to get me better by paying for my doctor, and then they're going to pay basically 2/3 of my income until I can go back to work. And that's it. There is no pain and suffering as if you rear-ended me on the way out of here today.
Not at all. Not at all. Here's the downside for workers. Most insurance companies, when somebody is injured, from day one, the plan is obviously to get that person back to work. But there's this element where the insurance company leans on the treating physicians to get them back to work, regardless of if they're ready or not. Doctor, you've had him out of work for 12 weeks now. You sure this guy can't go back to work? Do you know what he used to do? Hey, here's this video where he was outside going to the mailbox.
Right.
Man, look how he was walking. Aren't you sure he can do something? Yeah. So those are the details and the dynamics that we deal with.
How far will an insurance company, if you are on workers' compensation, how far will they go to get you off of that workers' compensation? I think you might be surprised. I mean, they have no problem hiring surveillance teams to come to your house and literally see what you're doing. They have no problem putting pressure on the doctors. We're going to finish up this thought with Carlos Leach right after this quick break.
Our law firm has helped thousands of people in financial stress get out of debt and back on their feet.
Filing for bankruptcy may wipe away credit card debt, HOA debt, and even IRS debt. It may also lower your car and mortgage payment. Visit youhavepower.com to learn how. A final segment here with Carlos Leach, the LeachFirm.com, workers' compensation, employment law, personal injury. You guys are, you know how I feel about your firm. Love you guys. I think you're fantastic.
I appreciate it.
I did not know that you and I both did workers' comp defense only at the very beginning of our career. So we know a little bit about this subject from seeing both sides of it. Now you represent injured workers. You used to represent insurance companies. How do you think that's helped you working on both sides of it? Because you can kind of see both angles,
Well, as you know, we have this joke that says now we used to do this, but now we went to God's side.
Yeah, exactly.
We're doing God's work.
Right.
So aside from that, I think for any lawyer to see how things work on both sides of the fence will make you a better lawyer. As a defense attorney, you get to see how insurance companies value claims, how they present various defenses, what they will pay on, what they will recommend. So it's really helpful in your development as an attorney to see how it works on the defense side and vice versa.
One thing I would caution people is if you're making a worker, let's just be honest. We've seen fraudulent workers' compensation claims out there. We've seen people that are malingering who aren't injured anymore, but have enjoyed not having to work and still getting paid. I have seen an uptick in fraud charges for workers' compensation fraud. What is workers' compensation fraud?
So, listen, most people are honest and they will do the right thing, and the average person doesn't want to be on workers' compensation. They want to go back to work and earn their normal pay. However, there are a few people who have realized how to game the system. And so to answer your question, workers' compensation fraud is basically you asking for or receiving some type of benefit for which you know you're not entitled to. You're saying that you got hurt on the job when really you fell off a ladder at home last night.
Yeah. Then
you go to work and say, I hurt my elbow at work. That's one of the most extreme situations I can tell you. And it happens. In my career, I think where it's a little bit more prevalent is when you see people with multiple claims. You see somebody going on their fifth claim. And that happens from time to time.
Who normally turns them into the state for investigation? Is this the insurance company that's sending it over?
Absolutely. So the insurance company or their attorney can make a referral to the state attorney's office. Usually they have to get a finding of fraud first from the workers' compensation court. If the person loses the claim, then they can refer it over to the state attorney's office.
Yeah, so what do we see insurance companies do to try to get us off workers' compensation? We were talking a little bit about surveillance. How far will they take that? And then what is this relationship like between carrier and medical provider? So
to answer the first question, when we had this joke off air, in my first job at a defense firm when I first started practicing, half of the day I spent watching video surveillance tapes of when the insurance company will refer it out to a surveillance company. And these people are good. I mean, they'll find you in the grocery store, basically anywhere. If you're in the public, you're open to be videoed. And they'll tape you. Their goal is to video you doing something from a physical standpoint that you made a representation to a medical provider that you cannot do.
Right.
You told the orthopedist you have problem lifting anything over 25 pounds, yet you're at home tossing around your 8-year-old daughter in the air with no problems. Those kind of conflict, and it seems like obvious fraud. So the insurance company they'll do anything. They'll send surveillance people out to watch you go to church. They'll see you in the parking lot going to your medical appointments. Anything they can do to discredit your subjective complaints.
And another thing I would see a lot is they would set a deposition of the injured worker, and the injured worker would show up in a wheelchair looking like they can't move at all, and then during the deposition they'd say, oh, really, you use the wheelchair all the time, and then they'd have the surveillance of them out running around the block or whatever. So that makes you look terrible as an injured worker because it makes you look like you're lying, number one, because you rolled in a wheelchair, yet we have video of you not needing it at all.
So I always tell my clients, listen, if they ask you, they meaning the defense attorney, if they ask you in a deposition specific questions about what you can do physically, they already know the answer.
Right.
And so you better tell the truth because they've watched you do it already.
That's right.
And any good defense attorney would do that, right? You want to know the answer to your question before you ask the employee. And hopefully, from a defense standpoint, you give a contradictory answer.
Exactly, right. Let's switch gears to personal injury a little bit. You guys do a lot of personal injury claims. How has the pandemic affected the personal injury world? Have the claims been down because less people are on the roads?
Oh, yeah.
Are insurance companies being cheaper? What's going on in the PI world?
The majority of our cases are auto cases, but you're right. During the pandemic, most people were working remotely. Some people didn't have jobs. And so as a result, traffic patterns went down dramatically. And you can follow the numbers from the Department of Transportation, and they'll show you, traffic patterns were down so much. Then as a result, there were less accidents, right?
Yeah.
And there's less accidents, then there's less auto claims. And so, yes, it affected it tremendously in 2020.
Personal injury, very saturated market here for lawyers in Central Florida. As you know, you worked at one of the biggest in the world, friends of ours, of course. It's saturated. What are you doing marketing-wise to try to get PI cases in the door for the Leach firm?
Well, we have a good reputation in the community. We like to think we provide good service all around.
Sure.
We are participants in all types of community activities, and we basically get our name out. We have a client database for thousands of people that we used to represent, and we let them know what types of services we provide. And for the most part, our ex-clients are our biggest source of business. We do a good job, and they'll send us 2 future cases. So that's the main way we get our cases is from doing a good job and getting referrals from our ex-clients.
What's the best way to reach out, by the way?
You can reach us a number of ways. You can reach us at theleachfirm.com. You can call us locally at 407-574-4999 or 844-7-CARLOS.
Have you noticed that personal injury cases that we've had to put into litigation? So, a lot of times, most cases settle pre-suit for the most part.
Yes.
But sometimes the insurance company is too cheap, or our client wants too much money, and we have to sue the insurance company, even though it's actually suing the person who hit us. Do you think those cases have gone more slowly because of the court system being backed up?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And you got to imagine for over a year, there were no trials.
Yeah.
Right. So just think about that. A whole year, and mostly every courthouse, there were no trials. And so now these courthouses are trying to come up from underwater and start scheduling everything.
Right.
And then on top of that, as you know, criminal cases take precedent. So they're going to go first. So now we're starting to get court dates on some of my cases, but we're looking at 2022.
I know.
And, the way insurance companies work, they usually don't make a decision to do something unless they're set with a deadline, like a trial.
That's right.
And if you don't have a trial anywhere near, they're just going to string you along and offer you peanuts.
That's right. And I think I saw a trial date 2023 for the first time the other day. So
Yeah.
look, don't get mad at your lawyer right now if it's taking
Yeah.
a little bit more time in the court system because they are backed up, especially in Orange County. I mean,
Right.
Orange County parking is worse and it's taking longer. That's
Absolutely.
for sure, right?
Absolutely.
Carlos Leach, theleachfirm.com as always, buddy. Good to see you. You're doing an excellent job. I'm always proud of you and the firm over there.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. And thank you for joining us out as always every Sunday here on TV 2070. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, it is youhavepower.com, or you can call me directly at 321-282-1055 for our entire WFTV crew from the Florida Man Radio Network studios. I will see you next week again for Behind the Law.
Have a legal question? Visit youhavepower.com. Give us a call at 321-282-1055 or find us on Twitter and Facebook. Thanks for watching Behind the Law with attorney Justin Clark.
Hi, this is Janet calling from the credit card company.
This is the 3rd time we've tried calling you. If you could please call us back. We've gone ahead and hired an outside collection.
The foreclosure process has moved is your final notice.
My law firm has helped thousands of people in financial stress get out of debt and back on their feet. When it all seems overwhelming, options may be available.
Filing for bankruptcy may wipe away credit card debt, HOA debt, and even IRS debt. It may also lower your car and mortgage payment.
Put the power back in your hands. Visit youhavepower.com to learn how.